And welcome into the Grizzly Coaches Show as we move on to the month of February. A lot of movement in the last week or so with Grizzly basketball. We still have plenty to talk about, despite there not being games over the weekend. Of course, the disappointment, no games against Montana State. Maybe a meeting down the road in Boise, but for now, it'll be the first time in 60 years that the Grizz and the Cats do not meet on the hardwood. That consecutive streak will come by the wayside, the fifth oldest rivalry in the history of college basketball. Joined by the Grizzly coaching staff here, head coach Travis DeCuire, associate head coach Chris Cobb, assistant coach Zach Payne. Jay Flores still on assignment, but of course, important news to report to you that they brought a beautiful daughter into the world, Leah Rose, and we'll talk with these coaches about it as well. Hopefully see Jay on the sidelines here very shortly as we get into it. Coach DeCuire, we'll start with you. You made it down to close to the finish line. There are 350 teams in Division I basketball. You were one of 5 remaining that did not have a COVID interruption. That, of course, changed last week. Just your thoughts on what the wild week has been like from start to finish for you.
It was a matter of time. I just didn't really see anyone getting through a complete season without some sort of postponement, cancellation, or just shut down for some practices. So for us, a few days off was a little bit like Christmas break, in all honesty, where you have some time away from the court. And then you just slowly work your way back. First practice is just an opportunity to sweat, try to get through it with no injuries, and then build your wind back over 2 practices. So that's about where we're at right now, and we're looking forward to playing Thursday.
Final question I'll ask you on it, Trav, but how unfortunate was it that it just happened to be rivalry week? And how excited were your guys? Because I know it was a unique situation this year, at least coming in, where maybe you were the ones that were able to pull off the win over Montana State, maybe pull a sweep, mess up the standings a little bit. But how unfortunate was it? It was MSU, and where was the excitement level with your team?
I don't know that the timing could have been any worse for both teams, really. I think for Montana State, that's a big week to be sitting where they're sitting in the standings. It's been a long time for them to be in that situation and going into the game, potentially as a favorite. And so I'm sure there was a level of excitement on their end. Same thing for us is our guys, we're looking for something, positive to look forward to. And a rivalry is always that, something that we've had some success with as of recent. And so our guys were excited and ready to play. But I felt more so about how well we had been playing, really, and in the direction we were going. And so it's unfortunate that the games won't be played, but hopefully we see them in the conference tournament.
Beginning in the fall of 2021, the new location of the Grizzly Coaches Show will be at Finn, located at the Doubletree by Hilton on the shore of the Clark Fork River. Join us for great food and drink and the Finn's pizza, freshly made in their wood-fired oven. Coach Cobb, I'll transition to you here and just to kind of pick up on what Coach DeCuire was saying, just the momentum that you guys were building. Yes, on paper it was a split, but anyone that was there could kind of tell you guys turned the corner and we're making strides. So as far as the unfortunate timing of letting it go then, but also picking up where you left off and trying to build that momentum here for a late season push.
Yeah, I think that I've said this to you, and I think we've talked about it before, but it's such a weird season because when you're, this really feels like we got 4 or 5 weeks left of the season. I almost feel like we're kind of just getting going a little bit and getting to really know our group. And, typically at this spot now that we're at in terms of games, it's really like the start of conference on a normal year. So I think that we're starting to feel a little more comfortable. I think our guys are starting to get a little bit better idea of what their roles are going to be and what we expect out of them and what to expect out of us and as coaches, just because, as we've talked about it, our continuity is not as like it normally has been in terms of bringing guys back, and we do have younger bodies. So I think the Sac State weekend was really good for us in the sense that we had a way that we wanted to play. I thought we executed it pretty well. Unfortunately, that second game couldn't finish it out in the second half, but over the course of 80 minutes, I felt like we played more good minutes than we didn't. And now it's just about being able to string 80 good minutes together, which is hard because it's hard to play the same team for 80 minutes. It's a grind, right? It's really hard.
And let alone 90 minutes, which was against Sacramento State with that double overtime contest. Zach Payne, transition to you. Communication has been always important with you guys, especially the last 9 months, 11 months, I guess, however long this COVID has happened, it seemed. But what was it like the last week of uncertainty, and especially in the middle of the season? What was the communication like between the coaching staff with each other and as well as maybe the rest of the team throughout the week of trying to figure everything out?
It was obviously disappointing not to play, but I thought our communication level was really high. We took advantage of the time that we didn't have on the floor. And we did some Zooms together. We did study hall, so you get a chance to see the guys' faces, and we just do study hall over Zoom. And the guys were in just constant communication about what they can and can't do in their apartments and stuff like that. And I think everyone was just really upbeat and really positive. So as disappointing as it was to not play the games, I thought that up until the cancellation, we had a really good week of practice, and we're really headed in the right direction. I thought we were going to play 2 really good games last week. And I thought the guys kind of carried, that same attitude and approach into, a couple-day quarantine, and now out of it into practice this week.
And Coach DeCuire, right back to you now. And again, last week probably provided some time to catch up with people maybe around the country. I know that you have a lot of coaching colleagues, and boy, it just seemed like you guys have been through the ringer the last couple of months where you guys are trying to continue on, power through. What was it like maybe just bouncing ideas off of other coaches or just talking through what everyone else is dealing with right now as well throughout the last week when you had a little bit more time to maybe do it?
It's like sharing war stories, really. Anytime you pick up the phone, whether you're responding to a text or answering a phone call or sending a message out to someone, the response back and forth is really just sharing what you're going through and how you handle it, and maybe taking some information and do some things differently moving forward, or you learn new things. The biggest thing for me, though, with those couple of days, I had a chance to see some guys, see their teams play, and give them some feedback on what I thought of their team, which I typically don't get to do that during the year. So I thought that was huge for some camaraderie.
Okay, all three of you are going to get this next question because you guys are able to be maybe more fans like me on a given night. What was the best college basketball game you watched, or how much college basketball did you watch? I mean, Coach DeCuire, I know that you just mentioned you were able to catch up on a couple teams, but whoever wants to start can go ahead with this. But is there any games that stood out to you guys? You focused on Big Sky. Did you go national? Fill us in a little bit on what your college basketball viewing was like.
The disappointing, one of the other disappointing ones was there was really no other games, and there wasn't a lot of games in the Big Sky over the weekend. I was looking forward to a little bit, disappointed we didn't get to play, but was hoping maybe you get to check everyone else out. And there was kind of just a game here and a game there. You didn't really get the full boat. So obviously we watched Northern Colorado and NAU. They played a really good and close game that came down to the wire. And then just outside of our conference, you look at like the Mountain West, Colorado State and Boise State played a series versus each other. That was pretty high level for 80 minutes. Yeah,
I would say obviously that Colorado State Boise one, really intense. Like the two teams were competing really, really hard. That's what stood out the most. You follow the Big Sky. When you watch the Big Sky, Riley, you just get more frustrated than anything, to be very honest with you. So I think we end up each other like, man, we should have done this, or man, I wish this would have happened, or whatnot. So I think you follow those games. The one thing that I would say is I've watched more NBA this year than I think I ever have when we have time off. And I say this to Zach all the time, right? Because we're both in the Bay Area. I am now more of a Warrior fan than I've ever been. So I find myself watching the Warriors and enjoying watching the Warriors because everybody had jumped on the bandwagon for so many years that it was kind of sickening to have that. So I feel like I'm rallying around the Warriors more than I ever have right now.
All right, Trav.
For me, I watched a couple games. I think the ones I enjoyed the most was the Cal State Bakersfield and Fullerton. Those two back-to-back games, the pace, I enjoyed the pace. Those are two coaches I've gotten to know very well, and to watch them compete. Bakersfield is now in the Big West. So that was huge. And then another close one that I watched that was entertaining was Grand Canyon versus New Mexico State, which was another barn burner that was close. And there's a rivalry that's been taking place the last few years in that conference. So I got to see some rivalry games that stood out and were entertaining.
And a peek inside, Coach DeCuire staying with the West Coast, catching up on the Big West, everything in between the WAC. Of course, Grand Canyon beating New Mexico State. A little bit surprising in that as well. The Griz home team is a group of locally owned businesses that support the Griz. Your official home team members are Direct Source, Great Floors, Static Solar, Linz Insulation, and True Green Lawn Care Services. Coach Cobb, we talked about the exciting news with Coach Flores. How much have you been able to communicate with him, I guess, throughout the last couple of weeks? And, of course, with Leah Rose coming into the world, very exciting times indeed.
Yeah, I think that, our staff's pretty close, and enjoyed text messages yesterday. I think his wife, I think they went to the hospital like in the early morning, like 3 or 4 in the morning last night, and had the baby yesterday. So I know he's excited. I know he feels really bad for not being with the team the last couple of weeks and what COVID's caused with that, just in terms of him being in the delivery room and whatnot. But he's an important part. He's probably the most important part of our staff, to be honest, because the 3 of us guys that are on the call right now can be confrontational and intense, and Jay gives a good balance to the deal. So Trav won't yell at Jay as much. So it's good that Jay's around, because Jay kind of brings the positive energy and vibes to the group, where Zach and I are easier to argue with, I think.
Well, that sounds like reality TV made for it, to get a camera on just the 3 of you going at it there in the coaches' meetings for sure. We're talking, of course, with Travis DeCuire, Chris Cobb, and Zach Payne, rolling along with the Grizzly Coaches Show. Team heading out to Portland this week. And Zach, I usually ask this question to Coach DeCuire, but we'll give it to you this week. What has the practice report been? Have you seen much rust, or what are some focal points as you guys did pick back up and get ready to go for the Vikings?
I think the guys have been ready and locked in. I think we had a very clear message going into the Montana State week that had nothing to do with our opponents and everything, just about us in terms of like our attitude and our approach. And we want to make sure that just because we had to quarantine for a couple of days, that didn't go away. And I don't think it has. I think the guys have been pretty locked in, and maybe a day and a half knocking the rust off, but we're back to normal. Guys are ready to roll.
Well, cannot wait for the Griz to return to action on Thursday. And on the other side of the break, we'll start previewing the weekend series with Portland State. This is the Grizzly Coaches Show from Learfield IMG College. Thinking of a career change? Wilson Logistics, the official trucking company of Grizzly Athletics, wants to see how you think our perks stack up. Visit wilsonlogistics.com, click the Apply Now link, and look into how to get more pay and benefits with Wilson Logistics. Grizzly Coaches Show rolls on. Men's basketball here for the first half hour. Sean Tiemann will take you home with the Lady Griz in the back half hour, talking with Travis DeCuire, Chris Cobb, and Zach Payne. The team getting ready to take on Portland State Thursday and Saturday. Thursday, an 8 o'clock Mountain Time tip. On Saturday, it'll be a 1 o'clock Mountain Time tip. I know this is fluctuated throughout the year, so always important to get your programming notes down. Coach DeCuire, will go right into it. Your thoughts of around the Big Sky Conference. We talked about the other leagues maybe in the West Coast in the last segment, but now that it's amazing to think we're at the midway point of the conference schedule. Teams have played anywhere from 10 games down to, I think, 4 or 5 games. So what is your mid-season assessment now of the Big Sky?
That's the thing. It doesn't feel like the midpoint. Maybe because of the imbalance of games played, the cancellations. I think the way the cancellations have taken place have made it very difficult to say where you think teams actually stand. I don't think the standings really tell you, in any way that who's the best or the worst team in the conference. Anyone can beat anyone. I think that this is about as level as it's been in my time with the Big Sky. Which has made it entertaining each week, right? You're entertained by, just sitting back waiting to see if the games are even going to be played. And then when you find out which games are going to be played, then, try to see who's playing for what spot in the standings. So this is going to be a close ride all the way down the stretch. And I think we'll go into the Big Sky tournament probably with no hands down favorite. And so I think that that's a positive because it keeps all the teams motivated and everyone has something to play for. But I think it's a fun year in that regard. Make the most of what you have, right? And so, we look forward to competing this week and looking up and seeing where we are. It's never too late to make a move.
And before we start talking about Portland State, Trav, would you say even more so? I mean, I think people are always interested to compare the league from year to year and how it's adjusted with maybe the last 5 years, how the Big Sky's trended up or down. Some years there's more parity. Some years it's more top heavy. How would you best maybe sum up the Big Sky just comparing it to previous years?
I'd say more parity. I think there are 3 or 4 teams that probably are more experienced, more talented than others, but it doesn't mean they can't lose to the others. And so that's why I say parity. But I don't know that the conference is as talented as it's been the past 7 to 8 years.
And we'll transition to Portland State. Zach, you're probably sick of me at least last year asking you about Portland State coming over, of course, from the Vikings, but you do have the scout this week, so it's very fitting. Portland State, they've went through the ringer this year with not being able, they have to get an exemption from the state of Oregon. They didn't start competition till December. And this is a group that returned that didn't return any starters. So a lot of newness in the mix as well. So kind of a mixed bag for them. How would you best maybe sum up their team and their season to date so far?
Yeah, they're really new. And they were really new last year too. They brought back a couple guys last year, but they were still really new. And that's just kind of how they're going to be on a year-to-year basis, the way they operate. I did point out to Nick Alice before we got on here, I have now officially, I've worked at Montana longer than I've worked at Portland State. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. But obviously they've had
lay off.
Lay it off. That's the only question I'll ask.
They had a ton of adversity. I think early. I think they were the last team in our league to be able to get on the floor, and you combine that with a lot of new guys, it makes it difficult. But they still present the same problems that they presented in years past. You know, they're pretty big. They're really athletic. They press for 40 minutes no matter what the score is, and they really try and attack you on the offensive glass. And so even though their team is different, the way that you have to prepare and what you're preparing for isn't necessarily different. The personnel just is.
Peary pressure. That's something we've heard about. Barrett Peary, their head coach, and it's all about creating more possessions. I believe the first year it was top 2 in the country in turnover margin, offensive rebounds, and they gained about 11 extra possessions a game. Then it's kind of trickled down 7 extra possessions, 6 extra possessions. But I guess long story short, when Portland State is recruiting, is it more they're recruiting a type of player that fits their system, or is it more of, okay, when a guy gets here, you're going to have to adjust to what we want?
No, you have to take guys that fit that system, because you can't run that system without a specific type of player. You got to be long, you got to be athletic, you got to have some level of rim protection, whether it's with just straight size or with verticality. And so, yeah, you have to recruit to that system. You got to take a specific type of player.
Northwestern Energy is committed to helping small businesses navigate COVID-19. Learn more at northwesternenergy.com. Our student athlete spotlight this week goes to one of the freshman trio that we've been talking about all year long, but Robbie Beasley, someone that played close to home in the last games against Sacramento State. And we've seen good production from him. What he showed against Arizona, Coach Cobb, was pretty amazing. And we've seen glimpses of it. Freshman, the inconsistencies, of course, we're going to see it from game to game, but a guy with tremendous upside. Talk about Robbie Beasley. We know the injury for him to start the season, but he seems to be finding a groove here as of late.
Yeah, I think when I think about a Montana Grizzly basketball player, especially in the last 6 to 7 years that we've been here, he kind of embodies everything that we're about. I think from a person, character standpoint to academics to basketball player, I think he really possesses all the qualities that we look for in guys. And I think he's only going to keep getting better. You know, you look at it, right? We've played 15 games. He's played 7, I think, or 8. So he's still really young, still really fresh, and trying to figure out, I think, how to do it night in, night out, which is really hard as a freshman, right? To be able to play back-to-back games, play well every game. He's obviously got a good-sized role, and that's something that the reason that he came here to do it. And I think he's given us a lot, and I think is going to continue to give us more. So I think we feel really, really comfortable and confident in who he is as a young man and what he gives us on the basketball court. He's really aggressive. He's a winner, and I think he's going to be a good one for a few years for us.
And Coach DeCuire, as we transition back, you probably knew this question was going to come about Portland State, a team that has given you fits the last couple of years. They have really played their A game when Montana's either come to town or when they have come to Missoula. So have you noticed common trends or at least focal points for you of like, okay, we need to do this better if we're going to be successful against Portland State? Because, again, they have played some pretty good games against you the last couple of years.
Riley, I've come to know you pretty well. I think we could probably do this show without you now.
You just answered the question. Yeah, I don't know if you'd want to talk about all the questions I got, Coach.
No, it's a common thing. Take care of the ball, rebound the ball. If we do those two things, if we minimize our turnovers and we can cut down their offensive rebounds and second efforts, we'll be in a good spot. And you know, like you said earlier, they're a team that thrives on having more possessions than their opponent, and that's how they get them. So if we win those two battles, we should be in a good spot.
Coach, we'll go right back to you just about the travel going out to Portland. Safety precautions are always number one, but going to bus. And the last time you've went to the Pacific Northwest on a bus trip, it turned out pretty good. So, number one, talk about the decision that went behind it. Number two, I want to know if your good luck charm is going to be on the bus this time too.
Well, Cobb made sure we'll be on the same bus, so I'm assuming we'll have the same luck. But No, it's safety precaution. You know, mostly safety, some financial, but we had flights booked already. We had gotten them at a decent rate, so that really wasn't a major issue. But when we had the short shutdown last week, it just made sense to go ahead and plan to bus because we weren't sure what day we would be leaving, or if we would be leaving, and it just made too much sense to just go ahead and plan ahead and travel as safe as possible. It was the last flight of the year for us. And so it just made sense at this point to just go ahead and bust the rest of these trips. This is the longest one we have up until Boise. And hopefully we're fortunate enough to be the team that jumps on a charter from there.
No plane rides at all for this team the rest of the year. Final question for all of you. It's the topic of the week. We've talked a half hour about basketball. Super Bowl picks. Anyone got a lean on the Super Bowl? Trav, you always get first word. Give us your best football analysis here as we close out the half hour.
I don't know how wise it would be for anyone to bet against Mahomes, but I think anyone that bet against Brady probably doesn't have any money left. So this is a tough prediction. But, you know, these are the types of matchups when the legends stand tall. So if I were a betting man, I would ride Tom Brady.
Going with the upset. All right, Coach Cobb, where are you going here? Super Bowl pick.
Raiders.
Oh, geez, get out of here. You're living back 20 years ago.
Yeah, I gotta go Chiefs. It's a safe bet. There's no way they score enough. The Bucs score enough to you can't stop Mahomes for 4 quarters. It's just that simple. So Chiefs, no questions asked.
Coach Cobb's going with the favorite there. Zach Payne, you get the final word.
Chiefs. They beat the Niners in the Super Bowl last year, so I'll just stick with it. They're still the best team in the NFL. So, no, I'll just go Chiefs. I agree with Cobb. As the Niners proved last year, it's really hard to stop them for 4 quarters.
This is the first time these two guys have agreed about anything other than when they come to my office about recruiting.
Oh, that's phenomenal. What I love, this is already setting up a great storyline because regardless, we're going to have some smack talk next week. Travis can either flex his muscles and say he picked the upset, or the 2 assistants can actually bond on what they agreed upon for the first time as well and talk about it. That was a great half hour. Thanks, of course, to Travis DeCuire, Chris Cobb, and Zach Payne for joining us. Hopefully, Jay Flores coming back soon as we'll wrap up this edition of the Grizzly Coaches Show. Lady Griz coming up on the other side of the break with Sean Tiemann and the Lady Griz coaching staff. This has been the Grizzly Coaches Show from Learfield IMG College.